and just walk it across their prey that's even bigger than their own head, which is a little bit grotesque, but it's worked for snakes for millions of years. And also, like all snakes, they have a forked tongue, which they use to gather in all kinds of senses of smell and taste, and they actually you can tell from which side of the tongue has the strongest scent, and then they follow it in that direction. And of course, you can handle green anacondas in the wild, but of course the trick is to always get behind the head. Once you have control of the head, you've got control of the snake. And of course, a friend of mine has handled anacondas, and probably the best way it has of defending itself is to excrete some unpleasant white paste out of its rear end, and it absolutely smells foul. And of course, my friend Dylan, because when he was handling an anaconda, it got all over his shirt and jacket, and he just had to throw them both away, because there was absolutely no way he was getting rid of the smell. And of course, as I said, it takes a firm grip to restrain an anaconda, but as you can see, these animals are tough enough to constrict crocodiles to death, so it won't hurt the snake even a little. They kind of get wound into a serpent straitjacket. Now, although a green anaconda wouldn't be able to eat me, a fully grown man, it could probably choke the life out of me. But still, they are, to me, the most incredible snake on the planet, and also my favourite snake. But also, another thing about the green anaconda is that, unlike most snakes that lay eggs, green anaconda actually gives birth to live young, which is very unusual for snakes. Of course, here is the green anaconda's range. Of course, right here in Colombia is where the tribe I mentioned live, where they have that unique relationship with the anacondas. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is the second big cat of the Americas, and also the largest ranging land carnivore in all the Americas. It is the puma. Now, the puma is also known as the cougar, the mountain lion, or the panther. But of course, I prefer to use the name puma because it's easier to pronounce. Pumas are found throughout North, Central and South America, but these pumas are found in the Andes Mountains. Now, the Andes is the longest mountain range on the planet, and of course in one particular place in the Andes, in Patagonia, at the southern tip of South America, at the Torres del Paine National Park, there's a higher concentration of pumas there than anywhere else on Earth. Of course, they're a vital part of the mountain ecosystem, and they're also top predator, but for many years their behaviour was little studied, although scientists that studied them were quite sure what the pumas do during the day. They sleep, but what a puma does at night is a different story. Like all members of the cat family, pumas are solitary with the exceptions of mothers and their cubs. A female puma will quite often have 3 to 4 cubs who she'll raise for 2 years, so she has to provide them with food and teach them how to hunt. Of course, in the Andes, this is the puma's main prey. It is the guanajo. Now, guanajo are a relative of the camel, but they are also the continent's most difficult prey to catch. I mean, they stand just over 2 meters tall, are 3 times the weight of an adult puma, but also they can deliver a lethal kick, and they are constantly alert, almost impossible to catch during the day. Because whenever they see a puma, they let out a whinnying call, and that gets all the others on alert. But at night time, the tables are turned. With very poor night vision, they're vulnerable to a puma. And And that's when the puma usually does most of its hunting, because at night time they have the advantage, because pumas, like all members of the cat family, have a reflective layer of cells at the back of their eye called the platinum lucida that enhance their night vision and gives them night vision 6 times more powerful than ours. But also, when you shine a light at a puma, their eye shine is like bright green, which is a little spooky, but actually very cool. And of course, what the puma has to do is they have to sneak up to a guanajo to no more than about 5 or 3 meters, making sure to be as quiet as possible, because while at night the guanajo are at a disadvantage, they do have a very, very keen sense of smell and hearing. And then the puma has to charge forward, and then they will jump on the guanajo's back and try to tackle it to the ground. And then it will go for the throat and suffocate its prey. Quite often, if a puma is alone when it's made a kill like a guanajo, it can't possibly eat an animal of such big size in one go. So after they've eaten their fill, what they do is they hide the carcass under a lot of brush, which is called caching, and they then come back between like 2 or 3 evenings and eat the rest of the carcass. I mean, they hide it so that scavengers like foxes, condors and vultures and even other pumas can't get a free meal. And of course, historically, pumas were actually exterminated from much of their range in the Andes by farmers who were worried for their livestock. But pumas have been making a dramatic recovery, especially in the Torres del Paine National Park. And they're now a protected species, but also farmers have learned to live alongside them because they've learned that because they can't be around their sheep all the time, they have specially trained sheepdogs to watch over their sheep, and they scare the pumas away, and they make sure that the pumas know to keep their distance. Of course, pumas are considered one of the most dangerous animals in South America, but that's mainly down to the fact that pumas have quite often been known to become people killers, but a lot of the time it's only if they are really, really hungry, like if they've not eaten for several days. And a puma is about the same size and weight as me, but it is more than capable of killing a fully grown man. So if you are ever out on your own and you see a puma, it's very important that you don't run or panic. You just stay calm and just stand your ground, and hopefully it won't attack you. Of course, here is their range in the Andes. And as you can see, the Andes mountain range, it stretches all the way down to here, and they're found across much of the Andes. Now, for one of the strangest animals in South America, and in fact the world, and another one of its giants, it is the giant anteater. Now, the giant anteater is one of the most peculiar looking animals on the planet. I mean, the first thing that always catches my attention is the nose. I mean, it looks almost as if it got its nose trapped in a door and just kept on pulling and pulling and pulling until its whole head just stretched out. But also they have ridiculously long claws, and they have a very thick bushy tail and very coarse hair. And that's, of course, I'm going to get to those later, but of course the anteater, given its name, is an insectivore, which means it only feeds on insects, and it feeds mainly on ants and termites, which have very painful bites and stings, and that's one of the reasons it has such thick or such coarse hair. But also the tail, because where it tends to live out in the savannah, it can be very, very hot during the day. So quite often they'll use their tail as like an umbrella or a parasol to keep under the shade. And in many parts of South America, anteaters are active during the day, but in places like the Guyana savannas or the Pantanal, the largest wetland on Earth, the anteaters usually come out at night to escape the relentless heat of the day. And if you're wondering why these animals are to me, deadly and very interesting, because it's mainly down to their feeding method, because they feed on ants and termites, and so they need to break into a termite mound, which is a little bit like trying to break into a bank, because termite mounds are usually made of mud and mixed with the termite's saliva, and they set as hard as concrete. But the anteater uses its enormous claws to just break a hole into an ant or termite nest, and then it will stick its very long, sticky, mucus-covered tongue into the termite mound and lap up as many as 10,000 termites. But they're long gone before these soldiers start biting and attacking, because just before they start biting and attacking, the anteater just swans off towards the mound. Of course, don't be completely fooled by their insect diet, because giant anteaters are known to be one of South America's most dangerous animals, because they can stand as tall as a man, and have been known to use their enormous claws to kill jaguar and even humans in what's known as a death hug. Of course, while the jaguar is their main prey, their main enemy, they have also been known to fight off pumas and even other predators of South America. But of course, a lot of the time, the anteater is only aggressive when it feels frightened, cornered, or is protecting a youngster. Another thing about the giant anteater is, while they don't have very good eyesight, they do have a very, very keen sense of smell and hearing, so even if they can't see you, they will probably smell you or hear you before they see you coming. But if you ever do see a giant anteater in the wild, it's always best to just watch them from a distance and just don't go too close to them, because they might feel frightened and attack you. But if they don't, then they can let out sort of like a growling roar, like a jaguar. That's usually enough to scare you off. Of course, here is the range of the giant anteater. And now, the next animal I'm going to show you is South America's largest reptile, and also a real living dinosaur. It is the black caiman. Now, the black caiman is the largest member of the alligator family, and I can tell it's an alligator because its snout is a lot flatter, shorter, broader and more rounded than a crocodile's. But also, the black caiman, a fully grown male can grow to be just over 4 meters in length and weigh almost a quarter of a ton, has 60 to 80 curved cone-shaped teeth, and a powerful muscular bite force. A lot of what they eat is fish, like catfish or piranhas, but they do occasionally eat birds and mammals, and quite occasionally they have been known to become man-eaters. Of course, probably their strongest sense, because like all members of the crocodilian family, they do have a very keen sense of smell, hearing and sight, but also running along their jaws are special sensors that actually pick up vibrations in the water. So that could be the wake of a fish, it can be an animal drinking at the water